Tomlin's new deal ignites a big backlash in the Burgh. Here's why. Welcome to the Steelers update from PennLive, where we keep track of all things Steelers, so you don't have to. This is John Lucy reporting. Coach Mike Tomlin's 3-year contract extension with the Steelers is a football Rorschach test. Among national NFL punditry, Tomlin's new deal was a no-brainer. The 52-year-old head coach, who has never had a losing season, represents stability. Players love him. He's a top 5 coach in the NFL with certain Hall of Fame credentials. The Steelers, these pundits insist, would have been foolish not to sign Tomlin. For if they did not, his stellar services would be snapped up by another team in seconds. That's one take. Then there's all those Yinzers out there in the Burgh who flooded sports talk phone lines with howls of protest after the news of their head coach inking a new contract broke earlier this week. When they look at Tomlin, they see something far different. A past his prime coach whose word salad pronouncements are meant to be pithy but come off tired and stale. Worse, Tomlin isn't a winner. He's a non-loser who's now underwater in the playoffs with an 8-10 career mark and is absent a postseason victory since 2016. The latter is an unheard of streak of playoff utility that's simply unacceptable in the place once dubbed the City of Champions. Where national pundits see stability, Yinzers spot mediocrity settling in with the Steelers. Yet it's the Yinzers who are laughed at by the likes of Rich Eisen and his ilk. But it's worth remembering these overreacting Pittsburghers of a certain age have witnessed 6 championship pro football teams come and go. They know what Super Bowl caliber football looks like, what it tastes like, and what it smells like. And they just don't see it with Mike Tomlin. He won his only Lombardi in his second season with the Steelers with a team largely assembled by his predecessor, Bill Cowher. So who's right? Truth is, both are. Tomlin is a top 5 coach bound for the Hall of Fame who a long list of other teams would fall all over themselves to hire. But he also has a big problem winning playoff games of late. Tomlin is a far cry from his, quote, standard is the standard pronouncements that speak to Super Bowl wins being the ultimate benchmark in the Burgh. This postseason issue is a real problem. The Steelers are a playoff-starved franchise. They've gone the past 5 postseason games with a big, fat donut in the win column. The most recent disappointment was the snow job up in Buffalo that again found the Steelers lagging badly behind the AFC's elite teams. These facts motivated none other than team president Art Rooney II to say it's time for the Steelers to start winning playoff games again. They've brought in a 1-2 punch of new quarterbacks with big names and some glaring flaws. That's being Russell Wilson and Justin Fields. They hope this will help rewrite the sad saga of postseason failures. But if you base it on what the bookies in Vegas are doing, it ain't going to work. On the coaching front, there is reason for encouragement, but it's not due to Tomlin. Rather, it's his new offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith, who has the right run first philosophy, the admiration of the Steelers' offensive players, and some head coaching experience that could make him a major upgrade. Now, it's way too early to say for sure, of course, but it's very possible that Smith's retooled attack could give us a surprisingly successful season. If that happens, Mike Tomlin is going to get the credit. If it doesn't, Tomlin will still get his new contracts far into the future. That's because Tomlin has become the Steelers' standard. For NFL players especially, the coach is now the black and gold brand personified. None other than the dean of Steelers scribes, Jerry Dulac, penned a column for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette that pronounced Tomlin as the Steelers coach for life. He'll wear the whistle for the Steelers for as long as he likes, playoff wins or not. Howls of Yinzer protest be damned. Dulac writes, quote, despite being the longest tenured coach in the NFL, Tomlin is not the highest paid, but he is right near the top at approximately $11 million to $12 million annually, and he will continue to stay there as long as he desires, unquote. By the end of it all, Tomlin will likely own all the Steelers' records. He's projected to eclipse Chuck Noll's record 23 seasons with the team with his next extension. Tomlin likely will pass Noll's 193 wins during his current deal. It's all good, right? Well, just don't look at Noll's playoff record. His 16-8 overall mark and his 4-0 sweep of the 1970s Super Bowls actually established the standard to which Mike Tomlin can only give lip service. This is why the Yinzers howl. We have much more on Mike Tomlin's contract and all the fallout therefrom, plus the latest news and notes from the Steelers minicamp. It's all in this big dollar edition of your Steelers Update podcast. And be sure to check out my full print column first thing Thursday on PennLive. As always, it will be packed with plenty of memes, bringing all the latest, greatest Steelers debates to life and to laughs. Right now, let's get right to it. Hey guys, we got to go back to that big and controversial news about the Mike Tomlin extension. To start, I want to circle back to the Jerry Dulac column in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. It lays out why all the national NFL punditry will always feel themselves to be superior to Pittsburgh's protesting Yinzers. It's all about the gaudy stats that make Mike Tomlin look so good, at least on paper, certainly not in the playoffs. As Dulac notes, quote, Tomlin has as many Super Bowl appearances, 2, and victories, 1, as his predecessor, Bill Cowher, who's in the Pro Football Hall of Fame. It's probably a safe bet Tomlin will end up there too, given the way he continues to climb the list of career victory leaders. Only Andy Reid, with 258, has more wins among active coaches. Tomlin is 5th among all coaches with at least 140 wins and a career winning percentage of .633, unquote. So there you have it. That's the conventional case for Tomlin, and it's quite simple, but I would say also shallow. And perhaps this is why some of those Pittsburgh sports radio guys are getting sick of talking about Tomlin and his seemingly unending playoff challenge Steelers tenure, because it's not going to change. Joe Starkey, with the Fan Radio in Pittsburgh, writes this in the Post-Gazette. Quote, I think I've reached the saturation point with all the Mike Tomlin talk. I just can't do it anymore. We keep talking about the same things, and nobody ever changes their mind. They are either satisfied with the non losing streak and getting hammered in playoff games. Art Rooney II fits this category, or they believe the Steelers can do better. I actually heard somebody say yesterday, at least the Steelers aren't the Chicago Bears. Thank God for that. Of course, the Steelers aren't the Houston Texans either. Texans have had more playoff success since 2010 and are in a much better spot now with a franchise quarterback. It's the same thing over and over and over again. I also heard somebody say that Tomlin would be hired in 5 minutes if he hit the open market. Yes, and so would Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, Sean McVay, Dan Campbell, John Harbaugh, Zach Taylor, Kevin Stefanski, and others. What's the point? I also heard somebody say, who would you get to replace Tomlin? Oh, I don't know. How about the next Tomlin? Or the next Bill Cowher? Or the next Chuck Noll? Which is to say, coordinators who have never been a head coach, but who could absolutely do the job. All great stuff from Joe Starkey, and he makes the great points for and against that aren't going to change. But Starkey admits Mike T isn't going anywhere. So, what are his real qualities and his real deficiencies aside from that horrendous losing playoff record? Starkey writes this, quote, Tomlin's strengths are his intelligence, his confidence, and his charisma. He is an excellent leader of men, but his track record in the personnel acquisition department, notably hiring assistant coaches, leaves more than a little to be desired. Of course, Starkey's referencing some of the pained offensive coordinators we've had, most notably Matt Canada. But again, I believe, and many people believe, and certainly the offensive players on the Steelers believe, that changes this year with Arthur Smith. But I digress, and now we return to Starkey, quote, for all the talk of how the players all over America would love to play for Tomlin, the Steelers lead the league in PWQs. That's players who quit. It happens during games. Deontay Johnson, George Pickens, and during seasons, Melvin Ingram, LeGarrette Blount, James Harrison. I guess players want to play for Tomlin unless they quit. I would have had Tomlin work the final year of his contract this season and evaluate him afterward. It was actually a perfect situation for that. The two acquired quarterbacks are basically in 1 year proven situations. Tomlin should have been two. Tomlin did A-plus work his first 4 years in the job. He's been about a C- since then, if you believe that playoff success is what truly matters in the NFL. Silly me, I thought the Steelers did, unquote. Hey, there you have it. That is a pure Pittsburgh take on Mike Tomlin. So where do you stand? Does it all depend on the upcoming season? I mean, nothing succeeds like success, and Tomlin could wipe away a lot of tarnish from his Lombardi brand should he lead this 2024 Steelers team on a playoff run. Now, the addition of Russell Wilson, who is seeking redemption, and the aforementioned Arthur Smith, who was seeking a reliable offense for the Steelers, could be two keys to that success. So, for some early mini camp observations, we turn to Mark Caboli with The Athletic, and he tells us two things about these two key ingredients for the 2024 team that could portend some positive things in Pittsburgh. Caboli writes, observation number one, Russell is your Steelers starter. Quote, there's been a lot of talk nationally about how Wilson will be pushed by Justin Fields for the starting quarterback job. Forget for a moment that the Steelers pursued and signed Wilson before they even made a run at Fields. That suggests they preferred Wilson to run a new offensive coordinator, Arthur Smith's offense. Fields was a fallback plan and a pretty good one when Kenny Pickett decided he wanted to move on from the organization. Pickett's now in Philly. The first thing that jumps out about Wilson is his leadership, followed by his work ethic and overall likability, at least from afar. Yeah, his diminutive stature is in there somewhere as well, but as far as tangible football traits, the guy still has the arm talent from when he played for the Seattle Seahawks. Wilson has big hands, and that helps explain the zip and the accuracy he showed in the Steelers' OTAs, whether it was a dump off in the flat or a deep ball. Who knows whether that will translate to the regular season, but remember how many open receivers Kenny Pickett missed on a routine basis last season? I don't see that happening with Russell Wilson, unquote. That is what Kaboli, an astute observer of the Steelers and really my top analyst that I go to, is seeing Russell Wilson early in these OTAs and minicamp with the Steelers. And, positive signs there. But, of course, a lot of question marks. Now we turn for Kaboli's observation on one Arthur Smith. He's the cast-off head coach from the Falcons who's now running the Steelers' offense. And the early returns on Smith are that the offense loves him and they love his scheme. Kaboli writes, quote, "Maybe it's the newness, or maybe it is deeper than that, but every player I've talked to about Smith loves his offense." Of course, they are going to say that, but this is more than typical. It's the way he's able to create favorable matchups with formations and schemes. Lots of teams have talented players on both sides of the ball, but the goal is to find a matchup you can exploit. Whatever Smith has done so far has convinced offensive players he can do that, or at least do it better than the last guy, unquote. That last guy being Matt Canada, and may I be the last to say good riddance to him and his offense. We turn the page with Arthur Smith. But of course, we aren't saying goodbye to anyone, and we aren't going anywhere. We are here for the duration of the off-season, training camp, the preseason, and of course, when those footballs start flying for real. So sign up for the Steelers Update podcast wherever you get your favorite audio, and of course, log on